Hello and welcome to the Better in Business podcast. Today's episode, I am doing part 4 in a series. The series is on how to start, grow, fix, or scale your business using the Business Mastery Blueprint. If you haven't listened to the first 3, think of it like a short course from me. You get to do while you are driving or something like that. And so please do listen to all of them. And let's dive into today's episode so I can continue to help you, and I'll see you in there. You've tuned into the Better in Business podcast, and I'm your host, Jeannie Savage. I'm a multi-award winning business veteran and head of the Strategic Bookkeeper Network. My network of strategic bookkeepers is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs do better in business. This podcast aims to challenge your thinking. If you're not thinking the right way, how can you act the right way? Each episode will dive into key drivers of success, which I also call the rules of the game. Learn the rules and play to win. Let's go. I like to start every episode by reminding you that it is globally recognized that pillar number 1 for success is up-to-date, accurate bookkeeping, which is the only way you can see how your business is performing in terms of profit and cash. If your books aren't right up to date, visit betterinbusiness.global, drop me a line and I'll connect you with a certified strategic bookkeeper. Fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper. Bookkeeping is a cost, whereas strategic bookkeeping is an investment that averages a 10x return on the fees. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to quickly let you know that I'll soon be running a brand new series of workshops on how to start, grow, fix, or scale your business. In these sessions, you can expect to get real education. We'll diagnose the problems in your business, uncover the mistakes that might be holding you back, and most importantly, I'll show you how to scale in a way that's rock solid so that your business gives you both the income and time freedom you want and deserve. This isn't theory. I've got decades of experience scaling my own businesses and helping others do the same. I've supported a large enterprise through a $100 million scale up, helped a trade business move from 0 to 1 million profitability per year, and guided others through meteoric rises in their industries. Along the way, I've been honored to be recognized as a multi-award winning entrepreneur, including Australia's Women in Finance Innovator of the Year and Bookkeeper of the Year. If you'd like to join the waitlist for these workshops, then just send an email to hello@betterinbusiness.global with the word waitlist, and we'll make sure that you're the first to know when we are running these workshops. See you in the episode. Okay, so quick recap. In part 1, we set the scene by getting you to identify what stage of business you are in right now: startup, growing, BBB, which is booked but broken, or scaling. We looked at the mistakes and misconceptions that generally lead entrepreneurs to take a wrong turn and end up in Painesville instead of the place that they intended, which is a profitable business that gives you the rewards of income and time as well as scaled business. In part 2, we looked at a little bit more on the type of business that you are running. So I could give you some food for thought on the kind of business that you're running, and then where you need to focus depending on the stage of business you are in. We continued the conversation in the last episode, part 3, of where you should focus depending on the stage of business you are in. And in this part 4, we are continuing that, and we are looking at the scaling stage of business where you should be focusing. Let's dive into what and why. And to help you with that, I'm going to share stories. So story number 1, so a scaling business that I work with. This is a specialty trade business who has had a meteoric rise and cornered the market for their industry. When they got to scaling, here's where the focus went to. First of all, business can be hard, right? And sometimes we feel like when one thing goes wrong, everything's broken, everything's going wrong. I remember one day doing some coaching with this client, and in the last episode, I talked about the coaching toolkit I have that my strategic bookkeepers have. And we've got a lot of models and diagnostic tools in there. So I sat down with these entrepreneurs, and it is really easy as an entrepreneur to focus on what you're not getting right, what you're not doing, rather than what you are getting right and the success that you are having. So we sat down and I used one of these diagnostic tools. So this particular tool is an ecosystem and a 5-step system as well. And it goes like this: plan, team, marketing, selling, standards. So that means plan. Have we got a game plan? I talked about this in the last episode. Your financial management plan, for example, which is critically important. Everything that you see on the left-hand side of the Business Mastery Blueprint is a plan that you need to learn, build, and implement, ideally before you start your business, right? Planning is essential, and just really understanding, how am I going to build a highly profitable business? Who am I going to serve? How many customers or clients am I going to need to buy from me regularly? What am I going to need to charge them? Who do I need on my team? All these things sit in the planning phase, okay? And we should always be planning, which is why it's a linear process, but also an ecosystem, because every day, we should be thinking about the plan, are things going to plan, and so on. And then team, and then selling, marketing, standards. So the second one, team, the reason that comes after plan is that once you've got a good game plan, like how you're going to win the game, just like a football team, then you need to know who you need on your team. Even if you are not going to have anyone on your team day one, you actually need to understand who needs to be on your team. We'll use the hairdresser example that I used a couple of episodes ago. If the hairdresser was doing this and they were going to rent a premises, they'd have that financial plan, right? They would understand those things, like how much are they going to charge? Where are they going to get the demand for their services? How are they going to reach their customers? How is the cash flow going to work? How much revenue do they need to make to pay all the costs, including rent, et cetera, right? They'll have a plan. Then in terms of team, well, they're going to need an income tax accountant. Unless they're going to do their own books, they're going to need a bookkeeper. They probably did need, right from the get-go, someone like a strategic bookkeeper to help them with that financial management plan. And then once they get into business, or even before they start, they might need some marketing support. That'll be someone on their team. So I can tell you right now, you won't win the game of business without a winning team. Success leaves clues, and this is what successful entrepreneurs do. They strategically understand who needs to be on that football field to win the game. We don't need all of one type of person. And I'll give you an example that I understand in sport is netball, because I don't really understand football. So on a netball court, I'm not going to get all shooters. Okay, I need a shooter, I need a defender in that area. I need a center. I need a wing attack. I need a wing defense. I need all these people. And it's the same in your business, okay? You may not recruit them all at once, but you need to look at who you need. Like a strategic bookkeeper is very different to a marketing specialist, very different to the apprentice, all the different people that you're going to need to win the game, okay? And then the third step is marketing. So that's lead generation. That's creating the demand for what you're selling. And that doesn't come first. That comes third. You need the plan. You need the skeleton team at least. And then, and only then, should you be lead generating. Because if you don't do that, you'll probably build a booked but broken business. So the third one is selling. Once you create the demand for your products and services, how will you turn the demand, which is your market and your prospective clients, into customers? That's how will you sell once somebody has an inquiry. So for example, if someone was to come into Sally's hairdressing salon and say, I want to get my hair cut and colored, and Sally said, well, that'll be $600. If the person says, well, that's way more than the hairdresser down the road, how are you going to sell that service? You've created the demand, you've generated the lead, but you need to be able to convert, okay? And then number 5 is standards, right? Standard operating procedures. So that's making sure that you have got quality and process in place. For example, when you recruit the apprentice, when you recruit the hairdresser, or even how you are doing the day-to-day. How are you managing the quality and the process end to end in your business? Standard operating procedures. For more on that, I recommend the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, either the whole book or just the summary version, which you can get on one of those apps like the Blinkist app. So just going back a step to that conversion example with Sally says cut and color is $600. There is a hair salon here on the Gold Coast, Curls by Melissa, and she micro niches into curly hair. And she charges 4, 5, 6 times more than her competitors. And I can't even get an appointment with her. She's so booked up. So not only has she created demand, but she can convert that demand into paying customers even when she is 4, 5, 6 times more than her competitors. I'm not going to go deep on how she does that. Maybe I'll do another episode on that. But those 5 things are like a diagnostic. So I was sitting with this scaling business one day because they were feeling like things were going wrong in the business. I said, well, let's use this as a diagnostics. We've got a game plan, right? Yes, we have a game plan. And we've got the team in place. They said, yes, we've got the team, but their field team, they were having problems with the field team. And I said, okay, so there's problems. Let's move on to marketing. You're generating tons of leads. Leads are never a problem. No, they're never a problem. Let's move on to selling. You're able to convert those leads into customers easily. Yes? Yes. Okay. Let's move on to standard operating procedures. Well, that's the problem, they said. Our standard operating procedures are okay, but they are not good enough that our team is doing exactly what we need to do. So we were able to identify that this scaling business needed to tighten up standard operating procedures so that their team worked more efficiently. And efficiently looks like one of a couple of things. On the win the work side, it looks like putting out a better quality, better product or service. And of course, that is always going to be part of the beating heart of your business. You need to be delivering a remarkable product or service, and standard operating procedures that support team. Okay, so team follows the process to get the result, is going to enhance your customer experience. And honestly, enhancing your customer experience is key to thriving in business and driving sales and driving profits because you're driving client satisfaction. It has been said that your net promoter score, which is how happy your customers are, is probably the number one key metric in your business, okay? But the other side of efficiency is just doing things faster and reducing the time involved in the actual work. And for all scaling businesses, they should absolutely be focused on tightening up, building and improving their standard operating procedures and the way that the team use and follow them. So the next area that scaling businesses should be focused on is it's really the rest of the blueprint. So it's using it as a diagnostics to identify where you can make improvements. But let's imagine for a second that I did that with a business and we finished, like we improved everything, right? Which is always continual improvement. Another area for a scaling business that can work well is to look at how you can diversify your products and services. And in the example that I gave of that trade business, we actually did that as well. So when we looked at diversification, there was lots of options because they had built a really, like maybe the most successful one of their kind in Australia where they trade. One of the options is to then become a supplier to your industry to teach others, right? Some of this is known as a creator industry where you can sell courses and resources and programs and intellectual property because you have a proven business model. Ultimately, you can franchise, you can license, you can sell, like I say, the course and resources. So you can take the value that you've built with blood, sweat, and tears, and you can repackage and sell that to others. Now, they didn't do that. They diversified into consulting And it wasn't to their competitors, but it was to the industry that they sat in, if that makes sense. I'm sure it does. So diversification allowed them to increase their revenue, increase their profitability, also to future proof, and they had a desire to get into that work. So in terms of the purpose and the joy, they were having more fun. They were getting off doing the same trade work on the tools all the time, managing the staff to do that, and getting into an area that they'd always thought about getting into one day. So diversifying. Now, I'm going to give you another example of diversification using the Curls by Melissa example. In episode 2, I asked you if you are a business that is location dependent. And on the whole, you would think that a hairdresser is location dependent. Curls by Melissa is in Southport on the Gold Coast, and she absolutely serves local people. Okay, so local people are booking in when they can get an appointment and paying an absolute premium for her special micro niched service on curls. But what Melissa also has is she has intellectual property. Now, I haven't looked at her website in a while, but I definitely use her free content to help me with my curls. But I can't remember if she does this, but this definitely could be something that she could do, is she could sell courses and resources on how to curl your hair and manage your curls, because she is the business in this. And then she could go from being a location dependent business to diversifying and serving people all over the world to help them with their curls. She could also diversify into training others, and she could do that online. She could train people all over the world, and that would be becoming a supplier to her industry. So diversification is amazing and exactly one of the things that a scaling business can and should be focusing on. So I'll give you another example of where a scaling business can and should be focusing. And that is definitely on the P4C succession. That means products for clients. Now, really simple example is an electrician that I use. If you were an electrician and you are starting and growing your business and you're doing very well, and you get to a point where you are booked up and you have to employ staff, great. But if you are a scaling business, then one of the areas to focus on is your database and what you can sell to them. And for an electrician, real life story, my electrician, he said, I've just done what I need to sell and deliver solar systems. So looking at what diversification product can you sell to your existing database? And on the Business Mastery Blueprint, that's on the left-hand side under product ladder, which is the fourth rung on the ladder. P4C succession. Succession means what's next on the menu for our clients. What else can you sell to your clients? And another example of that is the air conditioning installer that I talked about, that the obvious product that he would sell to his clients is a service. Now, it is 15 times easier to sell something to an existing client or someone you've served before than it is to a new client. Okay, so when you are a scaling business, then we need to look at squeezing more juice out of your orange rather than just growing and acquiring more clients. Absolutely, you've probably got systems and processes to fill up a pipeline and strategically acquire more customers, more clients. But for a scaling business, the stage of scaling, squeezing juice out of the orange is where it's at. One more example of an area of focus for a scaling business, one that I'm doing at the moment, one of my favorites to do. So this is another trade business, quite big, has cornered the Southeast Queensland market for what he does. We are diving into financial management. So this is where the scaling business can look at the Business Mastery Blueprint and work strategically, usually with a coach like myself, like a Better in Business certified coach, not just me, coaches in my network. But this is where a scaling business can look at the blueprint and can identify with their coach where the areas of opportunity to squeeze that juice out of the orange are. So inside financial management, there are lots of things like cash flow, this kind of thing. But one of my favorites and where I get massive wins with my clients, particularly tradies, is job costing. I am working with a client at the moment and actually with his team. Last time I was with him, we had about 6 in the room and we were starting a job costing project. Okay. So what will the benefit of job costing be? Why would I want to job cost? Profit. Okay. When you dive into job costing and improve your job costing, the flow on effect is massive gains in profit. I mean, this is how I've taken businesses from very low profit to very high profit. And then we want to make sure that we can sustain that. And every service-based business, whether you are health services, professional services, trade services, any kind of services, and even restaurants, every business needs to be looking at their financial management job costing. So that is an example of an area of the blueprint that we can go back and dive into. And actually, in the example that I gave earlier, we also did a financial management piece of work for that scaling business where we looked at the critical drivers of profitability. And really that did involve looking at the job costing. But when we look at job costing, we want to look at how we can monitor it on a daily basis to make sure at the end of the month, when we look at the profit and loss, we don't get a nasty surprise, because the profit and loss is the rear vision mirror. When we look at your profit and loss on, say, day 10 of the following month, we can't do anything about what has happened. So when you dive into and invest into job costing, we can look at what do we need to do on a daily basis? Like, what is the driver of profit? To make sure on a daily basis, we can intervene if something is happening that is going to have us end up with low or no profitability or worse in the red. So let's just summarize this episode with the areas of focus for the scaling stage of business. Number one, definitely focusing on your standard operating procedures that will impact your team and your efficiency and push your profits and your client satisfaction up. Number two, squeezing juice out of the orange rather than just trying to grow into new customers and clients, looking at what business you can generate from your database. Number three, looking at diversification of your products and services. Number four, using the business mastery blueprint as a diagnostics to see what you can work on and make improvements in order to drive your profitability, but also strengthen your business. So I call this repair the roof while the sun is shining. We continually make your business unshakable and unbreakable, which also makes it a good asset that is easier to sell if you eventually want to sell it as well. That is a wrap on this podcast. I'll see you in the next podcast for the final part 5 episode in this series on the Business Mastery Blueprint. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. I would love to help you start doing better in business right now by giving you a free little ebook. It's a how-to guide. It's called The 7 Deadly Cash Flow Sins. And also I've developed a business health check for you. It's super high value. Both are available at betterinbusiness.global. If you would like to fire your bookkeeper and hire a strategic bookkeeper to start enjoying a return on investment and get the support you need to optimize your business cash and profit and time well, simply visit betterinbusiness.global, drop me a line and I'll connect you with a certified strategic bookkeeper near you. I'll see you in the next episode.